Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Daniel, my good friend, how are you?
Great, mate. Sitting in Palo Alto. It's a little warmer down here, just working away for the day and excited for our launch next week.
Absolutely. And I just have to say, this is startup land. So it's actually Saturday at like almost 2 p.m. This is what we do. We work 24 hours. Why don't you take a quick second to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your a quick history of your background and what the heck is Datagrail today?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, as George mentioned, my name is Daniel Barber. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Datagrail.io. And we are focused on compliance and specifically privacy for companies looking to sell into Europe. Prior to Datagrail, I've led sales teams at companies like DocuSign, Responsys, ToutApp, Datanize, and others. And I advise startups generally in the sort of 0 to 10 million range. But yeah, excited to share a few points around what we're doing at Datagrail and specifically how companies can focus on GDPR, given it's next Friday.
Awesome. Yeah, so everyone's scrambling. There's tons of content on this thing. That's why we were right? We were like, let's hop on, talk about it.
Yeah.
Right now, everyone needs to know what the heck is GDPR right now. What should we be doing? Should we be scared? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, sure. So for those that are not familiar with the 4-letter acronym, and I'm not implying another one, so General Data Protection Regulation is focused on protecting the privacy for citizens and residents within the EU. But those individuals, of course, can be traveling all around the world. And so the central theme is making sure that at any time, an individual from that location can request, can delete, can understand how a business is maintaining or operating with their data. So it's a new era of regulation, but I would say, as we've seen with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, there's a general movement towards the protection and ownership of one's personal data. And so this is a very significant expansion from sort of the North American concept of PII. So we may have in business understood PII as an email address, right, or a phone number. Now this expansion of personal data means anything that can associate that individual. And so that could include titles, that could include IP, that could include, biometric information, that could include a whole bunch of things that in the past had no protection. So the goal of the regulation is to ensure that people within the EU are protected and that their personal data is protected.
Now, I think the interesting thing here, there are a couple things that keep me up at night now as a CEO of a company that's growing globally and has to not only like have a supply side of videographers all over the world in a variety of different cities, but also eventually sell into markets that are now beholden to this new regulation. But it seems like this is something that maybe is getting kicked off by the EU, but now I think in Australia, is that right? That you were going to see?
Yeah. So there's other countries are looking to do or adopt model clauses, which in legal sort of terms means a replication of the legal regulation. And I think, we saw Mark Benioff on, last week. His position is that there should actually be regulation in the United States as well. And I think, in 2018, we're at a stage where as an individual, if I'm using your service, it's fairly reasonable to say, okay, I want to delete the data from your service, or I want to understand what data you have on me as an individual. That's a fairly realistic and logical request. However, logistically doing that as CEOs, right, this is actually a very challenging exercise. And so, the current sort of business environment with many third-party applications isn't really set up to actually execute or perform that activity.
So, quick question. You and I have been in sales for a long time. We've worked together. We still work together tonight. Right? Capacity. I'm excited about the videos coming live.
Yes, me too. Couldn't be more excited.
And so as a salesperson and as a sales leader and marketing leader at a SaaS company, like, how should I be thinking about this? Is it just a matter of, okay, well, we have to sort of be compliant to be able to sell and operate in the EU, and that's maybe have a link in our outbound emails that say, hey, you can opt out, here's what we have on you, that kind of stuff? Like, how is this going to impact us? I mean, I know a lot of even ad tech people are just kind of like, what the heck are we going to do here? How do we deal with it?
Yeah. So I think this is the sort of thesis we're seeing. Marketers are not lawyers, right? Sales reps are not lawyers, and engineers are not lawyers either. Neither is a product team. And so at this stage, if you're not familiar with what's going on, and you do have European customers or future customers, you 100% need to connect with legal counsel, whether that's your internal counsel or external counsel. And the legal community is starting to rally around what's actually required. Now, whether you actually have made those steps, that's another thing. But for companies that are large and over 150 employees, there is a requirement to have a data protection officer, so a DPO. If you're under 150 employees, there are steps that need to be taken on your inbound marketing workflow. There are worksheets, and we have a guide on Datagrail.io to help companies go through those steps. But I would say, first step, consult your legal counsel, because as a marketer, you're not a lawyer, and there are certain steps in terms of personal data, what needs to be extracted in terms of whether you are a data processor, meaning you have a technology that is processing personal data. And for most companies, they're also data controllers, meaning that your sales and marketing team is making decisions based on personal data. So that puts you in a position of being a data controller and a data processor. If you don't have a technology, so you're not actually processing people's personal data as part of your product or service, then you're still a data controller. So you have legal obligations to make sure that the rights of the individuals that you have in your system are maintained, specific to the EU.
Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time. I just want to, I'm not going to steal your thunder, because I know that there's going to be a lot of information about Datagrail and all your, great services, which you have to have now. It's not a nice to have, it's a have to have. But as a SaaS leader, we have data sort of spread out, personal data spread out all over the place across multiple cloud services, these sort of things. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but I do know that your system will allow organizations to tap into all that data, organize it, clean it, and make it compliant. Datagrail.io. If folks want to actually learn more or get in contact with you, I know that you're really providing a lot of value, even if the service, even if they don't buy today, right? You're really a thought leader here. What are the best channels to reach you, and how can we get some attention from Datagrail?
Yeah, sure. So you'll see a lot more news about the business in the coming 7 days. We are invitation only at this stage, just because, as you can probably imagine, the demand for companies looking for all types and shapes and sizes of services and products leading up to GDPR is fairly strong. But you can reach me, on LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can email me. I'm giving permission for folks to email me, which is kind of crazy. But Daniel@Datagrail.io. And you can find me on Twitter at GaiJinDan, GAIJIN Dan.
And so does that mean now, was that like a GDPR statement compliance?
I don't know what that means. I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that I've given the permission for people to email me who have listened to this podcast.